Hey gang, this is John Newton, Snap-on John 100, and in keeping with being self-reliant, I'm going to be showing you how to change your accessory drive belts. In front of me is my daughter's 2001 Hyundai Accent. It's got a 1.6 liter engine. I've just changed both of the accessory drive belts. This drive belt and that one down there are the ones I replaced. This right here is a power steering pump, so this belt is called the power steering / water pump belt. The other one is the alternator, and it is going to be called the alternator / water pump belt. So you got to make sure you say all that to make sure you get the right one. Okay? So if you stay with me, I'll show you how it's done. Hey gang, this is John Newton, Snap-on John 100. And I'm here at one of my friend's super nice garages, and I'm going to be changing the belts on my daughter's 2001 Hyundai Accent. She's been having the trouble with it's losing power steering while the belts are squealing, and I've already tightened them, so I just think that they just need to be replaced. So I brought her car in, and I thought I'd bring you along so you could see how to change your drive accessory belts. Sometimes they're called Serpentine Belt, but in this case there's multiple belts, so that's why I'm just going to call them the accessory drive belts. Stay with me. Okay, the belts that we're going to be replacing are right here. I'm going to try to get the light in here. This belt right here, which is the power steering and water pump belt, and this belt down here is the alternators here. So this is the alternator and water pump bolt. A belt, and on this particular car the alternator belt runs the power steering. So when the power steering is squealing and slipping, most of the time it's because this alternator belt is too loose. So this pulley right here is attached to the same pulley. The water pump has got two pulleys on it, and so the alternators is driven off the engine. And so then this double belt, right, or double pulley system is what drives the power steering. That's why the adjustment is made on the alternator. The adjuster is right here. If you come around here, you can see better. Right there, that's the adjustment. You loosen this bolt first, and then there's another bolt underneath that the alternator pivots on, so you have to loosen that one too. So we have to get underneath the car, but we're going to loosen the one underneath, loosen this, and then we screw this in or out to tighten or loosen it. That's what adjusts it. There's a groove that this whole thing rides in, and this bolt right here pushes this back or brings it back in. So that's what we're going to be doing. The first thing you always want to do with this, because this is a high susceptible place for rust, is you want to spray this area really well with rust penetrant, like a WD-40 or liquid wrench or something like that. So I'm going to do that right now. So I'm just spraying it kind of liberally, and you want to just, if this starts to bind, you want to back it out a little bit, put it back in, back it in and out until you kind of break up that rust that's formed in the threads. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lift the car up and we're going to pull a tire. Now, if you don't have access to a lift, which most people don't, you want to, while the car's on the ground, you want to loosen these bolts, or these lug nuts, because once you've lifted the car up, then you're just going to be turning the wheel. So while it's on the ground, loosen these, then you can bring the car up and then take them the rest of the way off. And what you want to do is you want to get underneath here and lift the front end of this car with a floor jack, and then put jack stands on both sides so that it's safe. Okay, since I have a lift here, I'm going to go ahead and be utilizing that. Next, I'm going to take the nuts off. Okay, just put this off to the side. And I'll take the wheel off. Okay, as you notice, I'm wearing gloves. I like to use gloves to just keep the grease and stuff out from underneath your fingernails. It also protects your hands a little bit from dirty oil and stuff, which they've found is carcinogenic, but it's mostly just to keep that stuff out from under my nails. Okay, so I'm going to raise the car up so you can see better. Okay. As you can see, all the New York salt from the roads. What I have to do, the belts are on this side, so there's this plastic piece I'm going to take off. There's a couple of 6mm little bolts here, and a 6mm bolt takes a 10mm wrench. It's got a 10mm head. Okay, so what I'm taking off, there's a bolt right here and a bolt right there. So I'm going to try to take these off and still be able to film it. So bear with me here. Got a lot of arms in here trying to, so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm holding the light. Okay, here we go. Now these could break off. If they do, you can either drill and put a self-tapping screw in, or you can just leave that plastic piece out. Sometimes when a car gets really past 10 years old, some of these plastic parts just end up going away because of 6mm bolts are really small, so they're real easy to break off. Try to see if I can put that light there so it's still here, but I don't have to hold it. There we go. Hopefully you can still see. Now I can actually I'm not using air tools because you wouldn't have them probably, but normally I'd be using air to make it faster. Or you can use battery operated, they're fantastic too. There's the other one. There's usually 3 fasteners. This one has 2 bolts and then 1 plastic push connector. See, this one's going to break off. So we have enough to still hold it in. Okay, now that this is off, now you can see where the belts are. I'm replacing this belt and the belt up there, and I already see that I need to replace the air conditioner belt, but I didn't get one of those, so I'll have to replace that too. I'll just tell you right now, to replace the air conditioner belt, first you have to take this one, which is the alternator belt, and off. Then you can get this one off. This is the adjustment right here. This is the idler pulley, and the adjustment is this bolt right there. First you loosen this nut right here, and then you can turn this, and that will bring that idler pulley in or out to so that you can get the tension off of it to get that off. Okay, but we're not going to be doing that now because I don't have that belt. Okay, so now that the car's up in the air, I want to go ahead and show you the nut that I got to loosen. Here's the pivot point for the alternator right here. The back side, the other side of that's got a nut on it. Here's the alternator, so I'm going to go around and loosen that. I have to go get the wrench. Stay with me. now that we've loosened the bottom, the next thing we have to do is loosen this bolt right here, which is also an 8mm bolt, so it takes a 12 mil socket. I've got that, now that's loose. Now this other 8mm bolt has to be loosened, and I've pre-loosened it. And what I like to use with this is I like to use a ratcheting wrench. This has a flexible head, so that makes it really nice because you can get around the radiator. So you loosen this until you can get that bolt up out of the slot. And once you get it up out of the slot, then you can push the alternator forward, and then the belt will come right off. Okay, now it's up out of this slot. So now all I have to do is reach down and push the alternator forward, and then take the belt out. The belt comes out right here. And I call them accessory drive belts, but I think the reason why sometimes they'll be listed as serpentine belts is because it's a flat belt with grooves on the other side is typically what a serpentine belt is. I use the term serpentine belt when you've got one belt that runs everything. But so that's why I call these accessory drive belts. But sometimes when you buy them, they'll say serpentine belt. Okay, this next one is a V-belt. It runs the power steering. So to loosen that, we've got to pivot the whole power steering pump forward. And right here, it's hard to see, but right there is a bolt, and this is the bracket for it. The groove is right there, so you got to loosen this one. And it also pivots here, so you have to loosen this one first, then this one, and then you can pivot this. To tighten it, you need a pry bar. So I'm going to be using it's also 8 mils, so I'm going to be able to use the same ratchet handle to loosen this. You want to be careful that you don't get your knuckles. This one needs to be sprayed, so I'm going to spray some spray on it right now. It's a good idea to spray everything before you start, and I didn't think about this one. Okay, that way you don't have to, less likely to break things. Okay. That's one good thing about the heat in the engine compartment. That keeps things a lot of times from rusting as bad as they could, because it keeps a lot of things drier. Okay, that's loose enough. Now I'm going to come over here on the other side, and there's holes in this pulley. So you just line the hole up with the bolt. This one is a candidate for a short extension, so I'm going to put a short wobble extension on it. I got to use a shorter socket. So now I'm going to come right in here, and now I'm on it. And so now I'm going to carefully loosen that. Okay, you probably even saw the thing jump forward. Now the tension's off of it, so I can just push this forward. As you see there, now I can take this belt off. This one's hard to get on and off. Alright, sometimes it's hard to get past this hose. Okay, here it is. Now, once it's off this pulley, then you got to bring it down and around the alternator. The alternator now is in the way, so I got to pull this back with a pry bar. I'm going to pull this back. You see where you can put a pry bar in here? You always have to be careful because this is aluminum. So just gently use it to get it out of the way. And you can maybe turn it over this way. See how I'm just kind of working it. Now I can probably move it with my hand the rest of the way. But see right in here, this belt is trapped by the alternator because it's forward. Still need to move it a little bit more. Oh, there. That's what was holding it. The adjusting bolt was down. So now it'll move. Okay, so now I can free that up. And if you're having trouble, you can go from underneath. Just kind of yank it out. There we go. Alright, so this is a V-rib belt. And as you can see, it was shot. See the cracks in it? So it's really a good thing we replaced it.
Can you show it again?
So you can see that this was shot.
Hold it still.
See the cracks? It's cracked all along. You can see them from the side. Okay, so this was no good. So now the first thing we put on is the belt for the power steering because that's the last thing we took off. Part.
Go ahead.
Once you have the new part, this actually looks like it's reversed because this seems to have nubs on the inside, but this is just how it's designed. This is the V side. So a lot of times the best thing to do is to make sure that's the right part by holding it up to the old one. So you can see that that's going to be okay. Because a lot of times you'll get the wrong part. The parts people are pretty good, but it's easy for them to get the wrong one. So now I'm sliding this back down. I got to get it over this double pulley that's the water pump. And you can tell it's, the water pump pulley is the one that's got 4 little bolts holding it on. But it's actually 2 pulleys stacked on top of each other. Okay, I've got that just about in. Got to get it past the alternator. That's an issue sometimes. Okay. There we go. Okay. So now it's past the alternator. It's on the pulley that it needs to be on. So now I got to bring it up and around this one. And sometimes you can just ride it around by turning the pulley to get it on. Okay. My camera girl has told me that it's not on that pulley. Yes, it is on that pulley.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you see how this is a double pulley? She thought it was not on because this is the one for the alternator and down here is the one for the power steering. That's why the alternator is driving the power steering, because the engine is driving the alternator. So you gotta bring this forward as far as you can push it and then turn it and it will ride on. There we go. Now, to get the correct tension, you need to put a pry bar right in here. You need to put a pry bar in here so that you can actually move See how I'm moving this whole thing? So you pull it back and then tighten that bolt. So I'm going to have somebody hold the light here, and now I'm set this ratchet to drive forward and get it on. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to get it mostly tight. Got to make sure you line that hole up. There we go. Now, there we go. So now I'm going to tighten this to where it's just starting to get a little snug. Now I'm going to put my pry bar in here, and I'm going to pry it back and tighten it while I'm holding it back. Okay, now I'll tighten this other side. First I want to just feel it, and that feels about right. Hyundais like their belts tight. It's a good idea to support the back of the ratchet when you're using it, especially if you've got an extension on there. I've got a wobble extension, as you can see. That's so I could get around that other hose. Oops. Make sure that I think this socket's worn out. So I'm going to switch to that wrench I had. Because you don't want to tighten something so tight that you break it, because it is only an 8mm fastener. Double check that. Now I'm going to tighten this a little bit more. There we go. So now that belt is on. Now the next belt we got to put on is the one for the alternator. And the old alternator belt is here. The new one is here. And they look to be the same. So we're in good shape there. We might have to go underneath the car to get this one on because it involves 3 pulleys. And it's still all folded up from being stored. Okay. Alright, now I'm on there. I'm just going to reach down and put it on the other, without raising the car up. I'm just going to reach down here and put that on. I'm going to have to take it off the... I'm going to have to take it off the alternator first. So I'll finish it with the alternator pulley. Okay, now it's on the harmonic balancer. So now I just have to move this as far forward as I can, which is quite a bit. Now can you see in there? Now I'm just going to drop this pulley over there. It's dropped over. As you can see, it's on here. It's on the water pump pulley, and it's on the engine drive pulley, or the harmonic balancer, it's typically called. So now all I have to do is over here on this side, I got to pry the alternator back and get this bolt. I'll pull it out a little bit more because it's too far. So I'll just do that by hand. see here. Now I'll get a pry bar and very carefully move it back. Make sure I get this over the... Okay. There. Now the bolt, as you can see, dropped into the groove. So now all I have to do is start tightening it and checking the belt every so often to make sure that it's the right tension. So once again, I'm using a 12 millimeter. I'm using a 12 millimeter ratcheting box-ended wrench that's got a flex head. You can see in here. There we go. Okay. Sometimes you have to put your finger on the end of the nut to make sure that the you can ratchet it, because if there's not enough friction, it'll just tighten and loosen and tighten and loosen. So until it gets enough friction on there, I got to put my finger on there to hold it. Now I can slide it back so you can see what I'm doing here. This flexible head makes it really nice because I'm away from the radiator. Now I'm going to check the tension of the belt with my hand. So I'm just feeling down here. In other words, you want to find a place that's a long stretch of the belt that you can get your hand on it. So I'm trying to twist it. And there, that's it. Okay. So once you've got that adjustment done, then you tighten the top. Okay, that's done.
It's done.
We got the belt tight enough, so now what we're going to do is just tighten this pivot point. Okay. Okay, that's good. I left the plastic piece off because I'm going to have to replace the AC belt, so I'm just leaving that off for now. You want to make sure that you put where the valve stem is, put the groove so that this goes on correctly. I can't believe how many times I saw that all messed up. So once that's on, thread your nuts on. Make sure you get them really well threaded so that you don't cross thread them. I'm going to use air. This the torque for these bolts are supposed to be 80 pound-feet. So you want to use a torque wrench or torque sticks. I don't have those right now, so I'll have to correct that later. Okay, the battery's about ready to die, so I just wanted to tell you this. Before you put the tire on, I know those are tight enough from experience, but to check that is you bring the car down, start it, and then turn the wheel all the way to one side and hold it there for a second. That's the highest pressure and the most force you're going to have on the belt, so if it doesn't squeal when you do that, you're good to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lower the car, start it up, and everything should be good.